Disclaimer. Please note that this episode contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the speakers, commenters, experts, and/or hosts. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the channel's policy or the views held by this channel or broadcaster. The broadcaster or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of The Night Crew with Drew and Katie. Today we will be talking about the People's Temple cult, or Jonestown. And first of all, we're going to talk about the summary, what Jonestown was like, what Jim Jones was like, and at the end of our podcast, we do have a video of Jim Jones preaching, and that's about 8 to 9 minutes.
So with this audio, it's from the 1970s. It's not the highest quality of audio, so keep that in mind when you go to, listen to it at the end of our podcast. Now, like Katie said, it's about 8-9 minutes long, but we're going to let you listen to it uncut so you can hear what his preaching is like and what he's saying. So just keep that in mind when you're listening to it. It's not HD quality audio.
So let's get started with what happened in the background with this cult. The People's Temple was a religious temple led by Jim Jones in the 1950s. He began recruiting members in Indianapolis, Indiana, and wanted to overcome racism and poverty, which most of his congregation was people of color. And given the time period this is in, there was a lot of racism going on and segregation going on. So he wanted to bring everyone together and get them out of poverty and help them find the resources they needed.
And most of his cult members were people of color. And him himself was a white man. So keep that in mind going forward.
So in 1964, Jim was ordained and he warned his followers of a nuclear holocaust, which then leads to other things because he starts to get paranoid, but we will go over that later. So this warning led to the movement of the cult, and soon it opened congregations in Los Angeles and San Francisco. So during this time, the People's Temple had 3,000 members and 20,000 members attending Sunday services at either location in California, which is so many people.
Yeah, usually the cults that are smaller, around the hundreds or maybe 1,000, are a little bit more crazy than the bigger cults because it's hard to convince a lot of people that, to follow me and do it as I say.
Yeah, but man, he convinced a lot of people to believe what he was preaching. I mean...
Now, he eventually gets caught, but I'm going to ask you, Katie, do you think the FBI or CIA was aware of what he was doing or what was going on with this cult?
I mean, given the First Amendment and everything, obviously people have the right of their religion and preach what they want. But, I mean, I believe if issues start to come up about abuse or financial fraud, which did come about eventually, they have to investigate and figure out what's going on and why he has so much influence over all of these people.
Well, he mostly focused on faith, healing, social concerns, and he wanted enthusiastic worshipers drawn from black churches. But he punished anyone who disagreed with him, which most cult members do. So, for example, he used to do loyalty tests on these church followers, and that involved pain and sleep deprivation. But soon he invited other members to live with him communally, and their church was accused of abuse against some of its members, some of them children, and financial fraud. So, due to the paranoia of being caught, and eventually he did get caught, Jones preached to his members that they need to be willing and ready to commit mass suicide for him. And in 1977, he led hundreds of his members to Guyana.
And it was due to his paranoia of getting caught and the nuclear holocaust where his followers actually believed him that this would happen or the government would take their children. That's why they were so inclined to practice this mass suicide. I also read somewhere that in order to practice the mass suicide, Jim Jones would make them all take this cup and act like there was poison in it, throw back, and
Almost like a shot?
lay down
Like a
on the
shot?
ground. Yeah, but they were practicing for it. They're like, oh, this is how it's gonna go.
So
This is
kids
how
were
you-"
involved with it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And they were like, oh, okay, let's practice before we actually do the mass
Oh, my
suicide.
gosh.
Yeah, that's messed up.
I don't know what type of power he had over these people, but come on, man, that's insane.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But on November 14th, 1978, a couple concerned individuals went to a U.S. Congressman, Leo Ryan, to visit Jonestown. Now, Leo interviewed Jones and his followers, which led to some of the followers wanting to leave with Leo or leave on foot. Now, after visiting Jonestown, the congressman and about 4 other people were shot to death by the temple gunmen as they left. So they were shot in the back. Soon after this visit, most of the residents at Jonestown committed a murder-suicide and either got shot or poisoned. Now, these people either drank that poison like it was a shot of whiskey, or they got shot.
Yeah.
Either by themselves or other people.
Usually, if they refused to drink the poison, Jim Jones had a few of the members shoot people so that they would die as well. Because they were refusing to commit this mass suicide, pretty much.
But eventually, Jones told his other residents that if they don't commit suicide, the military will take their children. Now, due to this, his people drank the cyanide-laced drinks, and those who refused to drink the punch were forcibly shot and killed. Now, Jones died from a gunshot wound, but it's unknown whether he shot himself or not.
I personally don't think he shot himself. I don't think he had the balls to do that. I think someone else killed him, but that's just my opinion.
Now, do you know if he had, wives or anything? Do you think he had multiple wives, or did he have one wife?
Well, in the movie, because the movie's based on the actual event, and I know from the movie this woman shot him. I can't remember if it was his nurse or one of his wives, who knows, but that's how they portrayed it in the movie.
Okay.
I personally, either way, don't think he shot himself. I think he saw what he did to everyone. He's like, oh man, maybe I should stay alive. Maybe.
Yeah, it seems like a cowardly move there.
It was.
But the death toll from this whole mass suicide was over 900 people, including 300 that were 17 and under. So 1/3 of the people who killed themselves for this cult were under 18. Now, it was one of the largest mass deaths in American history until 9/11.
Which is insane to me that one person killed all those people.
Yeah, one guy told these people to kill themselves, and they didn't argue, they didn't fight, nothing. They just did it. Which the amount of brainwashing you have to do to this many people is absolutely insane, and his manipulation tactics, I don't know what he did or what he used, but it seemed to work.
Well, it's just so sad because he abused some of the members, and the fact that they still followed him and worshipped him that's crazy to think about. That they would die for him, pretty much.
But the only other person that was convicted in this case was a member by the name of Larry Layton. Now, he was convicted of conspiracy and aiding and abetting in the murder of the U.S. congressman. He was sentenced to life in prison. However, he was released from prison after serving 20 years and was placed on parole in 2002.
See, the fact that he was one of the only people convicted makes me angry, and he only had to serve 20 years. I mean, he should have taken the blame for way more of that, but I guess he had good behavior, which is why he got out early, whatever.
But the People's Temple, it disbanded and declared bankruptcy in 1978. Now, if you go back earlier on what we were talking about, he was pretty bad in financial fraud. So I imagine he had a lot of money, but as soon as people started, offing themselves, they lost that money very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And there really weren't that many survivors. I read a story about there was an older woman and then an older man that survived. I know the older man was in his house, but he ended up dying a year later. But I really couldn't find much about him. And then the other survivor was Miss Thrash. She was 52 years old. So she met Jones in 1957 and claimed that Jones had healing abilities that drove away her breast cancer. And she said he gave his followers clothes and helped a lot of people, which she loved helping people, so that's one of the reasons why she joined. And eventually she sold her home for $35,000 and gave the money to Jim Jones for his cult. So once she did so, she and her sister followed the cult to Guyana. Unfortunately, her sister drank the poison, and Miss Thrash hid under her bed as the massacre took place, because she could not participate in that, because she disagreed with it. After a few years, Miss Thrash forgave Jones for what he did.
Now, this was in 1957, right? So our technology back then to help beat cancer, and, we just didn't have the technology back then to beat cancer. So for her to say, yeah, I definitely believe that he helped me beat my cancer, that's a bold statement. He was saying a person could cure my cancer.
He was definitely a manipulator to the fact that I just feel so bad because she still forgave him after a few years. She's like, you know what? It is what it is. He did what he did. And he even killed her sister. Her sister was the reason Miss Thrash got involved with this cult, because her sister was just so thrilled by his preaching and everything. It's just sad that her sister passed away, and just imagine, she was saying in her interview that once she got out from under the bed, she went outside and saw all these 900 bodies laying around.
I'm sure, just laying on the ground. I actually think I saw pictures of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's pictures everywhere about it, and law enforcement and the authorities didn't come until the next day, so she had to stay there all by herself with all these dead people.
It took a day for law enforcement to come?
It was about a day,
A day? Oh my god. So they had almost 900 people laying outside.
Mm-hmm.
No one got the police involved. No one stopped to see if they were okay. It took a day for police to come?
I don't even know. Well, I'm sure once the congressman was shot, there was word that he was dead since he didn't return, so I guess they kind of assumed something's going on. And
well, do you think they were focused on him too much about what happened to him than the cult, and that's why the cult wasn't looked at too closely?
The reason the congressman went to Jonestown was because he kept getting these allegations that it was a bad place, and then he ended up dying as soon as he tried getting on his plane back home. So I think that's what maybe alerted authorities, unless someone else did somehow.
Well, do you think that the police were so focused about the congressman's death that they didn't really pay attention to the cult and what they were doing?
I feel like the congressman probably told authorities before he left, like, this is going to be sketchy. I would keep an eye out on us. Okay. If we don't return, something is wrong. I'm sure that's what he did, honestly, because he knew going into this something was going to be wrong.
All right. Well, what was Jonestown like? Well, the first 50 residents of Jonestown built 60 cottages, a couple laundry rooms, 2 schoolhouses, a pavilion, a food storage area on site. Even though the village was made up for about 50 people, almost 1,000 residents traveled to the village in 1977.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, you're cramped, man. You're cramped.
They don't...
60 colleges for 1,000 people? Whew, good luck.
Yeah, apparently they weren't thinking about that before they built all that. But either way, they're like in the middle of this forest, and they cut down all these trees. So basically they're living in the middle of this big field.
I'm sure they built it up, and they cut down these trees, built houses and all that stuff, right?
Gardening and vegetables and whatnot. Secluded area, pretty much. So once people did get to Jonestown, Jim Jones himself took the residents' medications and made them take barbiturates and amphetamines instead. I do not know why he did this. Probably to make their mind mush, and so that they're fatigued and tired, everything, so that they're easier to manipulate. I don't really know why he did that.
So, what can you give our listeners and me? What are barbiturates? What are those?
I believe those can make you fall asleep. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And I mean, amphetamines, they make you fatigued and tired. I mean, those drugs would put you to sleep, or they'd make you really drowsy, I should say. So they were like zombies, pretty much. I think that's what he wanted.
And that's probably why they believed half of the stuff he was telling them, because they're so drugged up.
Yeah.
My question is, where did he get all this medication from?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, back in the 50s...
I mean, you could go to any doctor and ask for medication. They'll give it to you without a hesitation.
Back in the day, I'm sure... Because he was a political person. He was high up
I'm
there.
sure, yeah.
So he probably knew a pharmacist or a doctor or someone that could just give him...
Like a corrupt pharmacist that could give him whatever he wanted? Okay.
Because I'm sure doctors went to his church and everything, so he probably got a deal. Who knows?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But at Jonestown, he gave them his own drugs, pretty much, illegally. And there was also public humiliation, private sexual advances, families were torn apart. And Jones, this is so messed up. When I read this, Jones told all the men that they are homosexual and controlled who they interacted with. So basically, what I remember from the movie, Jones would get with their wives, but the other male followers could not practice sexual acts with their wives, with other women, anything.
Until they got his approval?
Well, I mean, yeah, but he said they were all homosexual. So
he basically forced them to be gay.
Yeah. While he is messing around with their wives, probably getting them pregnant.
Yeah, that's messed up. That's real messed up.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. I don't know how we convinced them of that.
And he also made most of these residents work 6 days a week, doing a lot of physical labor, which I imagine were building the houses, doing stuff for their garden. He also censored a bunch of letters from residents' family and friends, and phone calls were very restricted.
And with the phone calls too, what I saw online, he would basically make up these scripts for the followers to say to their family, like, oh, it's so great here, he's treating us so nicely.
And I guarantee you, at least one of those parents or friends knew something was up.
I would hope so. But either way, I mean, what can they do? Police wouldn't believe them.
Yeah, I guess you can't force somebody to get out of a cult if they don't want to, but, I mean, the least they could have done is get the police involved, but after that mass murder, you're telling me it took a day to find them, figure out what was going on? I mean,
they were in a pretty secluded area, so...
I guess that's true, yeah.
And that's a lot of people to clean up. I can't even imagine how long that took. With all the bodies and everything. Oh my gosh.
Crime scenes and lab work. Oh, man.
So, now we're going to be talking about what Jim Jones was like and why did Jones' followers worship him, meaning there's some traits that these followers had that make them more susceptible to Jones' manipulation. So,
Jones had numerous antisocial traits and a need for dominance, which most cult leaders, they start out that way. Maybe because of his childhood, we don't really know. But he gained his dominance by having influence over politicians, doctors, throughout their whole time campaigning. So many politicians feared Jones, especially since he was aggressive in his actions and the way that he would use his cult. Now, he didn't see the consequences of his actions. He lacked a lot of impulse control and empathy towards abusing his members, the children, the women, etc., right? He also he had a sense of calm and boldness when he led to doing dangerous activities.
And also, he was very narcissistic. I can never say this word. He was a narcissist.
It's a hard word, huh?
He was, and he had a very large ego, and he believed he had high importance. Like I said earlier, he believed he was God. He believed he had a lot of power, and he could influence these people in a horrible way. So, Jones' followers joined People's Temple due to a need for belonging. They didn't feel accepted by society and were oppressed, so they joined his group to fill that void. Yeah, I think I'm thinking due to that reason, he was probably one of those people growing up, he didn't have a lot of friends, and he wanted his followers to feel like they had a community to rely on.
And I also feel like he was bullied when he was a kid, because usually men or women like that, they tend to get bullied or have a terrible childhood to turn out the way that they do.
So, this was all during the time of the Civil Rights Movement. Jones preached that his members, mostly people of color, were being discriminated against, oppressed, and marginalized, which was one of the biggest sources of his preaching. And members displayed signs of antisocial personality disorder, for example, the murder of Leo Ryan, the congressman, and dependent personality disorder for their obedience and compliance with this mass suicide. So they themselves had issues they were working on, and they felt that this religious organization could help them, which, I mean, in some cases, people do find religious organizations to help them with their mentality, social life, everything.
Sometimes it works out. Hopefully there are good organizations like that to help people out. I feel like most of them are nowadays. But back then, obviously a lot of stuff could have flew between 1950 and 1980s and 90s, I'd say.
Yeah, but I think it's sad how one person, because usually with cults, I feel like it's usually religious. I don't know of another one that isn't religious. I can't think of one right now.
Yeah, most of them are religious. Most of them are religious cults. That's just how it goes.
I just think that's messed up. That first of all, they're forcing their religion on you, and they're making it a bad thing.
Yeah, I can't believe that many people followed him.
I know.
The amount of manipulation that he had to do to make all of these people follow him and then kill themselves. We're talking about most people I know who served the United States with me don't have enough courage to do that. And we fought people.
Mm-hmm. It's like the cult in Waco.
Yeah. I was going to say there's a lot of similarities from this one to that one.
Yeah, same thing. He was having kids with all the different followers.
Yeah.
They're so messed up too. But either way. So that was today's episode. We're going to play that video. And it's about 8 to 9 minutes long. But I'll have Drew play that.
And if we have any commentary afterwards, we'll definitely put some in there after this is done. But here is Jim Jones preaching to the People's Temple in 1972.
Each of you give a fond embrace, a salutary kiss of greeting to your neighbor. Let's fill this atmosphere with warmth and love. Now as we meditate, God is love. Love is a healing remedy. We're going to reach out to areas where man has seemed to have difficulty. As we concentrate that the gifts of the Holy Spirit might function, or what the secularists might speak of as the paranormal, let us believe. Let us believe. Sister Ingram, you're concerned about the losing of your sight. You're not able to see me clearly. Things just blur to you. You have to stumble around lately through crowds and are not able to see even people's faces close up to you clearly.
That's true.
You've told me nothing about your condition. Is that
No,
correct?
I haven't.
Give that little sweetheart a little bit of love. Thank you, baby. Please. Now, take your glasses off. Just dare in our faith. We've seen Sister Brown here who was blind, totally healed. Saw one of our sisters blind from her childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see. Now, look at my face. I'm going to hold up some fingers. You concentrate hard. I love you. The people love you. And most importantly, Christ loves you. What do you see? How many fingers?
3.
One finger. You don't even need your glasses, child. Let's all be thankful as she cries back there. Let's cry and rejoice with her. Edie? Are your fingers numb? In your right hand? Having enormous headaches in your head?
Yes.
Reach your hands out. Reach your hand out to me. Reach the fingers out that are bothering you. Now, is the pain gone? Conley. What a sensation about you. Did you once lose a loved one, I think the name of James?
Yes, that's my
He
brother.
was 14 years of age. And he was reading something, and someone asked him for what he had, and he didn't want to give it.
Yes,
and
he did.
that person shot him to death.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I'm saying this to give you faith
Yes.
so that you can mount up, because you've been feeling pain here in the chest
Yes.
and in the back.
Yes.
And you injured your foot some time ago, and
Yes,
you've been
I
having
did.
constant pain in it, where you had to move around with a chair.
Yes, I did.
I do not know you, and you've told me or no one else the things I just mentioned.
No,
Is that
you
true?
sure haven't.
Now, where's your pain?
Don't beat it, man.
The doctor has relieved you from your work in the second row. You have a bad spinal condition,
Yes.
and your hip is injured.
Yes.
Step from your wheelchair. Begin to step from your wheelchair. Try it. Just try it. Just try it. We have nothing to lose. We have no face to lose because we've said we're no panacea. But I have seen more healings here than I've ever seen anyplace. I love you. Jesus Christ loves you. Jehovah Jireh. All the goodness of all the world's great religions in the name and the mercy and the goodness of Jesus wherein I stand. Come forth, my dear. Stand up. Take that step. Bless your heart. Take that step. Take that step. Now. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. You can do it. Move forward. Move forward. Child, sweetheart, would you step out my way just a little so that I can just keep my love flowing? Now, move forward. Freely, freely, freely. Now begin to exercise the gift. Begin to exercise the joy. I love you. Christ loves you. The people love you. Now, sisters, walk briskly. Walk briskly.
So that was the audio, and as you can hear from the audio, John would throw up his hands pretty much in the air, and he would say, look at me, look at me. Like, for example, the first girl that was talking, she looked up at him and she can't see, and he said, I need you to look up at me. He held up his couple fingers, and she was apparently instantly able to read them, which is weird.
Yeah, apparently what the surviving follower said, he has healing abilities, but either way, you can tell how enthusiastic and emotional all those followers were when he was preaching and healing people. He was getting their influence, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, the last one, I don't know if you guys could understand the audio. The last one was a woman in a wheelchair. He told her to look at him and stand up and move forward. And he says move forward several times. This woman gets out of the wheelchair, walks 3 steps, and then just starts running around in the crowd, and everybody's cheering and screaming because they're happy. Now, here's my theory on that. I think he pre-chose these people in this crowd to show that he actually is able to do what he says. And if they didn't do what he said, he'd kill them. That's my theory on that.
Or he'd abuse them. Yeah. And if people didn't believe his healing abilities, he'd abuse them.
Yeah,
Tell them to be quiet.
There is a very small chance that he was able to actually heal these people, but scientifically it's impossible. You can't just look at someone and say, you're fixed, and they're just fixed. It doesn't work that way.
Either way, it's just watching the video, watching the people cry and cheer and clap, hug each other.
They absolutely believed it.
Yeah.
But I also think, like I said, he chose those people for those exact reasons and those exact problems to show everybody what he says is actually happening, but it's not actually happening. They never had these issues, and he's just doing it to show, his followers that he can do what he says.
Tell you what, he knew how to manipulate people and change their mind, essentially. But either way.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
It is.
It's pretty insane. So thank you guys for listening to our 4th episode of The Night Crew with Drew and Katie. We appreciate all of you guys listening and taking the time out of your day. Please hit the like button, subscribe, follow, rate us, hopefully 5 stars.
Hopefully.
And we hope you have a good night.
See you next week.
So, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at The Night Crew. That is capital T and then HE, capital NITE, capital KREW. That is The Night Crew. Thank you guys. We really appreciate all of your help and all of your support. And we will see you next week. Thank you and